morning, Bucknutters. Welcome to the Bucknuts Morning 5 here on Friday, May 27th, 2016. I am Dave Biddle, joined by the People's Champ, Matt Baxendell. Bax, simple question to start the show up for you. Will Kellen Mond be a Buckeye?
Simple answer, yes. I know I'm swimming upstream against some of the opinion on this one, but hear me out. So right now the Buckeyes are looking for another quarterback in that class. Kellen Mond is considered to be one of the top 2 or 3 choices in that class. Now, a lot of people are wondering whether Urban Meyer is going to wait and hold back on Tate Martell, or if he's going to actually pull the trigger on Kellen Mond if Mond chooses to become a Buckeye in the next week or two. And Mond is looking to flip quick here, make no bones about it. Here's why I think he becomes a Buckeye. I think Urban looks back at the recruiting of Deshaun Watson and that year of quarterbacks, where we waited too long waiting on Watson, trying to chase your top target, and all these other quarterbacks that Urban wanted went by the wayside, and he ended up with Stephen Collier. Now, right now, I know Danny Clark is in the class, so you're not going to end up quite in the same situation as settling for a low 3-star guy like Stephen Collier. But I think Urban looks at it and says, I could play the game, wait it out, try to get Tate Martell, or I can get a quarterback who I rate almost as highly on my board in Kellen Mond and just call it quits for quarterback recruiting this year. In the end, I think it's a decision that he's going to have to make. My opinion on this one is that I think Urban's going to say, I'd rather have one of my top 2 or 3 choices versus none of them potentially. And it'd be hard for him to turn down a guy of the caliber of Mond. If he does, though, Mond goes to Auburn. That's just, I think, the way this looks right now.
Yeah, it does seem like a 2-team race at this point, Ohio State against Auburn. Okay, let's say Kellen Mond does become a Buckeye, or maybe another quarterback. Let's just say, for argument's sake, they will get another 2017 quarterback. In the end, what happens with Danny Clark?
You cannot get Danny Clark out of this class, period. Danny Clark says he wants to become a Buckeye, he becomes a Buckeye. Unlike Todd Sibley, who doesn't have the same cachet and history of being a 4-year commitment for Ohio State, you cannot offer Clark a red shirt. You have to have Clark a full-fledged member of this class and let him come into OSU to compete. It has been too long that he's been committed to OSU. It has been too long in the eyes of Ohio coaches that Ohio State's word has gone towards this young man. I don't care if he's not a perfect fit for the system. There are very few recruits who are in the same situation as Danny Clark in terms of importance in the state of Ohio and keeping the high school coaches on your good side. Danny Clark is in this class unless he chooses not to be. And I think Urban's well aware of it at this point.
You touched on it at the very end there, unless he chooses not to be. I guess that's where I'm leaning here. I agree with you. I don't think there's any way you can pull the offer, or even offer him a gray shirt, which is kind of a way of pulling the offer, which is what they're doing with Todd Sibley. But might Danny see the writing on the wall? I know he's got the Buckeye tattoo and everything, and, love is blind, so maybe he won't see the writing on the wall. But they're recruiting other 2017 quarterbacks. If he thinks he's never going to play at Ohio State, you think he might go elsewhere, or you think he is just locked in on being a Buckeye regardless?
I think he doesn't look at it that way. I think he looks at it as that he was committed to Ohio State for a couple of years now because he thinks it's the best way for him to develop as a player. I think he looks at it as, let's say I don't win the starting job, what happened when Cardell Jones won it? Cardell Jones went in and was a 4th-round pick in the NFL draft despite only starting half dozen games. I think Danny Clark looks at it as he's going to come in and he's going to surprise people and he believes in his abilities. Remember, this guy's a guy who won a state championship last year as a starting quarterback. I don't think Danny Clark's going to look at it and go, where are you? And I'm just going to show up and not play. These kids don't look at it that way. And especially somebody like Clark, who has envisioned himself as Ohio State's quarterback for a very long time. I think Clark knows it's going to be a tough battle to get on the field. But really, is it a tougher battle to get on the field than it would be if he went somewhere else where there'd be other highly recruited quarterbacks too? So I think Danny Clark is, I don't think he's going to choose to leave this class either. This is a relationship that maybe hit a bumpy patch, but I think they've patched it up. He's going to be a Buckeye and he's going to be at Ohio State for at least a couple of years until the writing's on the wall that he won't play. And then maybe we'll talk about Danny Clark going elsewhere. But I think it's way too premature at this point. I mean, we could have said the same thing about Troy Smith coming out of high school too, by the way. We could have said the same thing. 3-star guy with Justin Zwick in this class? God, he's never going to play. The guy won a Heisman. So I don't think you can write any recruit off at age 17 or 18 at this point.
Let's talk about Art Briles a little bit. Now, former Baylor head coach. Are you pleasantly surprised like I am that Baylor did the right thing here? Back, I thought for sure they were going to make Ken Starr the fall guy, keep Briles, say, Briles didn't really know, or, he reported it to Ken Starr, and he reported it to his bosses, and they didn't do anything about it, but he did everything he was supposed to. I just was convinced that he was going to get away with this, but Baylor did the right thing here. They fired Ken Starr. I guess they reassigned him. He's getting a soft landing, but they fired Art Briles. That pleasantly surprised me. Your take?
Well, in the post-paternal world, saying, I told somebody else it's good enough isn't good enough anymore for sexual crimes, period. And honestly, I'm very pleasantly surprised, but I think it really helps the cause that Baylor is founded as a Baptist university, and a lot of people involved in the university still look at it as a religious institution. You know, if this was some monolithic state university, I don't know if Art Briles loses his job, despite the fact that there's copious evidence that his staff didn't give a crap that his players were raping their way around campus. So, to me, this is, and put it in context too here. Baylor sucks at football outside of the Art Briles era. I mean, if you go back and look at it, it's 3-8 and 2-9 city, right? They were the team that I played with in dynasty mode in college when I wanted a challenge. Right? They're not a football school. The last couple of years are a historical blip in terms of how good they've been at football compared to what they traditionally do. You know, Texas has been turned upside down the last couple of years with the University of Texas being so bad and Baylor and TCU being so good. So firing Art Briles isn't just like Ohio State letting Jim Tressel go for a far less consequential thing, I should add. What Tressel and Briles did, I'm not comparing whatsoever because they don't compare. But
right.
Baylor choosing to let him go is letting go the most successful coach in their school's history by a country mile is an enormous decision to make. And it shows some actual character from the university of, I don't care how it got here, at least they finally made the right move. Hopefully this is something that going forward for college football is something that's going to be more carefully monitored. And this isn't a situation where I don't want people saying, oh no, a coach had a player who committed a sexual crime. How are we going to fire every coach whose player makes a dumb decision or is involved in a he said, she said situation? That's not what this is. This Baylor staff there's evidence, direct evidence in that report saying Baylor staff actually discouraged people from reporting or even trying to get anything that happened talked about. I mean, they literally were victim shaming. It was Taylor Lewan level stuff. All right, it was complete scumbag and crap of the earth stuff that was going on down there. That's why Briles was fired, not because one of his players did something bad off the field. There are good and bad apples everywhere. All right, and I'm sure Briles is a guy who maybe didn't intend for it to be this way, but this was literally winning at all costs. And Baylor decided they didn't want a part of that, even though they never win at football. So I have to give the school kudos. This is a difficult decision that they made, but it was the right one.
All right, switching gears. To finish the show, let's talk some 2016 Ohio State Buckeyes instead of all this other stuff. This other stuff's interesting, but let's focus in on the 2016 Buckeyes. I know entering spring, back from talking to you, your biggest concern was the safety position. Now, a few months later, is safety still your biggest concern, or is there another position group that you're the most concerned about?
Safety went from like a giant glowing wart of terror to me to being much more comfortable with the position. It was a giant black hole of fear, and then they actually found the guy Malik Hooker who he lived up to the one guy every spring who gets praised to the high heavens by Urban Meyer that we haven't seen play it down yet. I don't like to put a lot of stock in spring performances in terms of spring games, but man, when you have a guy like Hooker flying around like he was out there in the spring game, doing it consistently the entire duration of spring practice, that really helps. And the move of Damon Webb midway through spring from corner to safety, I think also really alleviated a lot of my concerns because that was something I'd hoped they'd do. And Webb is an experienced guy who's been on the field and won't let the big moment get to him. So that is no longer my biggest concern going into the season. I would say my biggest concern going into the season is twofold. One is the depth of the tight end position because behind Marcus Baugh, it's a bunch of freshmen and then a bunch of players who haven't really played yet. Marcus Baugh goes down, we're in a world of hurt right now until somebody can step up to prove themselves. And then the other position of concern for me is going to be who emerges at wide receiver. There are so many options, so I almost don't want to call it a concern. It's more of a position of intrigue. But right now, the question is Torrance Gibson going to turn into the player that a lot of people, myself included, think he can be? The A.J. Green level kind of massive target that's going to get a dozen catches in the end zone this year, half of them jump balls. Or is he going to not get on the field because of something stupid? Are we going to see the guys with broken legs come back and be the big contributors that they were hoped to be last year? Or are they going to end up not being able to get back from their injuries full speed? Is Johnny Dixon healthy? Is Paris Campbell going to finally come out and be the player we were hoping he was going to be? What happens when Benjamin Victor gets to campus? Does Austin Mack do it as a true freshman? I think the position of the most concern is the position of the most intrigue, which is wide receiver. But I wouldn't say it's flat out concern because I feel like you're going to find a couple contributors from that group.
Great insights, as always, out of the People's Champ, Matt Baxendell. Thank you, Bax. You can catch his column every Sunday, The Bucket. And thanks to the listeners out there. I hope everyone has a great day and a great Memorial Day weekend. Let's hear some Buckeye swag, best damn band in the land.